Hey, good morning to those of you out there in the West Coast and all the way out there in Alaska. It must be pretty early for you in Alaska and Hawaii out there, Russ. I know you'll be coming in here in a second. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. It's a great day. It's nice and sunny out there. It's my favorite part of fall. You'll notice that today's training, I'm going to do it a little bit more truncated because I've got an important meeting with my kids, actually, that I got to take care of. But I like being here every day at noon to go live with you. So today, again, in this training, we're going to be talking about why federal agencies don't take your call, right? And what you can do about it. I want to give you some tips on this. So one of the lines I hear, and I love this line because it is a reality of what I experienced when I was a small business owner for a long time. But I feel like I'm doing all the right things, doing everything everybody tells me, but I'm not getting the meetings. I even run into customers I have, right, where I have them and we're supporting them in a workshop, talking about how they can get in on their own and knock on doors and get in, and they'll get back and say, hey, I've been trying this and I'm not getting in. And that's a reality sometimes, right? And what I encourage them to do is, things I'll teach you today, look at your process, etc. But what I say is, if you're not getting in the door you're trying to get in, don't just keep pounding on that door. Maybe look at different doors, come at it from different angles. And it's something that's really important for you to remember in there, because when you're trying to get into a federal agency, when you're trying to knock on doors, and you want agencies to take your call, some do take your call and some don't. So what, right? The line I like to use is some will, some won't, so what? In this case, I'm saying some do, some don't, so what? The idea is don't get bogged down in the people who don't take your call. Don't get bogged down in the people who won't do what you want them to do. Buy from you, take a meeting, take a call even, respond to your email. Don't get bogged down on the ones who aren't doing what you want. Focus and look for the ones who are doing it, right? The some that do. And in here, this last thing I put is you got to remove the dirt to get to the gold. So if you think about a gold mine, you don't walk up to a gold mine, step into the door of the gold mine, the entrance of the gold mine, and there it is. There's gold and nothing but gold. That's not the way gold mines work. That's not the way life or sales works, right? You have to dig through the dirt. You have to remove dirt. It's no big deal. We remove the dirt to get to the gold, and then we mine the gold, and now we're rich. And that's what you're doing here when you're trying to get into federal agencies and get them to take your call. When they do take your call, that's gold. And when they don't, that's dirt. And so every time you reach out to an agency and they don't take your call, don't think of it as something bad. Think of it as dirt. Perfect. I got to move that over here because I got to keep room for the gold. In today's training, I really want to cover down on when you're reaching out to agencies trying to get them to take your call, that it's important that you set reasonable expectations about getting in the door. What are those reasonable expectations? I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about how you can look at your current processes. When you look at your process for calling and getting in, which part of your process is failing you, right? Because generally, the process is the problem. Rarely is it me or you, right? It's the process. If we're not getting what we're wanting to get, if we're not reaching our goals, achieving our outcomes that we're expecting or setting for ourselves, then we need to look at the process, because that's the problem. It almost is never a person, it's the process. And when you look at the process, you can fix it. You can't fix people. And the last thing I want to cover down on is just some tips about following up, right? Success is in the follow-up. I talk about being persistent, never giving up. Sometimes they don't take your call, but if you call them another time, they might take your call, right? So just being persistent. We're going to drive into those topics today in today's training. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner, and since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's a process. When you follow a process A to Z, you're going to have repeatable, predictable results, and that's what I want for you. It's why I do this training. Just a quick reminder, we've got training every single day. Unless there's some reason I can't do it, we do training every single every single weekday, because I do it even on holidays. But this training coming up in the next few days. Today is about they're not taking your call and not getting in the first call. But what about when you have a meeting and you want to have a second meeting, but you can't get those? Tomorrow's training is about getting that second meeting. How do I convince them to give me a second and third and a fourth meeting, right? And then as we go into the rest of the week, we're going to be talking about how to have predictability in the success that you want as a government contractor. And this is for bigger businesses. Friday, I really want to come down and be teaching people who frankly aren't making money. If you're not making money and you're coming into the government space, I don't teach how to get rich quick. I teach you how to just build a business in a legacy business. I'm trying to help you build a business that is big enough that it's there for you and for your legacy. You can pass to your children or you can sell, right? That means incrementally growing, not trying to go from 0 to 1 million in a day or 0 to 10 million in a year, right? Those are unrealistic goals. So I'm going to talk about realistic goals on Friday. Okay, so we're going to dive into this training and beginning with just understanding your expectations. And this is a bell curve I teach. I call it, it's a technology adoption bell curve is where I first learned it many, many years ago back in the internet boom and even before that. It's also called an adoption bell curve that I call it an adoption bell curve when I'm trying to reach out and get people to do what I want. This bell curve tells me how many of them are going to adopt the path that I want them to adopt and how many will not, right? And so I want you to think about setting reasonable expectations. When you're coming into this training, something must have attracted you to the training, right? The title of the training is something along the lines of how come the federal agencies aren't taking my call, right? That means you probably are making calls and reaching out with email and you're not getting the meetings that you want. You're not getting enough of them. You're not getting the right ones, whatever it is. Or they do things like I just saw today where it's like, oh, happy to meet with you. Let's meet 6 to 8 weeks out. It's like, what are you talking? I could build a house in 8 weeks. That's so long. That virtually is a no that you just gave me kind of thing. And so if you're making those calls, my question for you, and don't put this in the chat, just put this in your mind. How many calls are you making, right? How many calls are you making a day? Are you calling a sufficient amount of people? And today in this slide here where I'm talking about setting reasonable expectations and looking at the bell curve, I want you to think about 100 people as the minimum of enough people. That's the ante for getting in the calling game, right? If you're trying to get meetings. And I want to break down what these sections are, right? In the bell curve, there's 5 groups of people and everybody will fall into one of these groups. So depending on what's happening, people move from group to group. If I give you a quick example, if it's public speaking and somebody says, hey, who wants to public speak? I'm right there on Innovator. I like talking, clearly, right? But if you ask who wants to buy an iPhone, the next version, I'm a laggard. I'm all the way at the other end. And so let me explain what these people, these roles are, right? An innovator is somebody that when you say something, they already believe what you believe. It's as if they were just waiting for you to call them. When you think about early adopters, these people are similar. They believe what you believe, but they weren't waiting for a call. But the minute you call, they're like, huh, that totally makes sense. I've been thinking about that. I've been having some ideas. The difference between them and the innovator is, oh, let's just get on the call. The early adopter says, let's schedule it. Like the innovator wants to talk right away. And these are the people you really are trying to reach, right? When you think about 100 people or 100%, right? 100 people, you've got 16 people out of 100 that when all these 100 pick up the phone and answer it, 16 will say, let's get on a call right away. So just right there, you see the sheer volume of activity you have to do to reach the people you want to reach. This is no different than if when Apple comes out with an iPhone and they're trying to sell it, there's innovators who sleep in a tent and they wait for it. There's early adopters who get their Starbucks coffee and they're there first thing Monday morning when the store is open. They're going to buy the new iPhone, just they're a little bit different in how fast they are. Now that's different from early majority. So the early majority are the ones who are, they like your product or they like the idea of having a meeting, but they have a little bit of hesitation, and what they're looking for is social proof. They're looking for somebody else to have bought the iPhone, or in your case, they're looking for you to have talked with somebody else, right? This is why it's easy for me to get meetings and to make introductions all the time, is because I have enough early adopters and innovators I've met that I can then say, hey, can you introduce me to the early majority? So when you think about the bulk of the people that you're trying to reach out to in 100 people, and you're thinking about setting your expectations, so many of us look at 100 people and say, well, I should be getting, 80-20, 80% of them should be meeting with me. Well, that's just not the way it works, right? These 34% who are early majority who would want to meet with you want to wait until you've talked to the small business specialist. Have you worked with us before? Or am I getting an introduction from an existing incumbent prime who's in there, or even a subcontractor, somebody who's working with me in my agency, and are they making the introduction? I just made an introduction this morning, and actually you could have seen it if you had looked at yesterday's trainings chat. Dave Waltz is from the Navy. I reached out. I know Dave. More importantly, Dave knows, likes, and trusts me. And I said, Dave, somebody in our community does this. Would you be able to meet with them, have a quick intro, or guide them to the right place? He got back right away. Yes, let's go ahead and do that. And so as you meet more and more people, the activity you're going to be doing is easier, but you can then tap into this early majority. The reason this big white bar or column exists is because that's a chasm, right? We call this crossing the chasm, this idea of once you get to the 34%, you're off to the races. You've got 50% or 50 people at a particular agency that you're trying to get into, whether the government or industry, doesn't matter. You've got this group of 50 people because you've crossed the chasm. But in order to cross that chasm, you must have reached the innovator and the early adopter. But if you're here right at the beginning where I talk about the gold mine and no's are dirt and yeses are the gold, well, I've been talking about the gold, right? And in the early majority, that's gold as well, but it's kind of buried deep. But over here on the right-hand side, the late majority and the laggards, without describing them too much, the late majority is going to pretty much resist it as much as they can. Really, for example, if you're trying to get in, the only reason they'll talk to you is if there's a formal way of talking to you. And the laggards never are going to talk to you. They don't want to talk to you. And so you got 50% or 50 out of 100 people that you call and who pick up the phone who don't want to have anything to do with you. This is vitally important right here for your expectations. Do not try to talk to these people. Realize who they are the minute you get them and go, dirt, perfect. The more dirt I get rid of, the sooner I find the gold that's in the gold mine. Hopefully that makes sense as you move forward. This adoption bell curve, I explain it in many, many different trainings, but the biggest thing to remember is if you call and reach 100 people, your expectation should be about 16 people that you're going to reach who will take your call and say, hey, let's set up a meeting. All right, so let's talk about your process, right? And I'm going to accelerate the training again because part of the process is family first, and I got to jump off today's training a little bit early, but I'm still going to give you massive value in the next 2 slides here. So I want you to look at your process. I've already talked about this. Be persistent. Just keep following up, right? But also be patient. And patience is the dirt, right? Be patient that you're going to get these no's until you get to the yeses. But if you keep being persistent, the gold is there. So here's a couple of tips about your process. First off, if you're not getting federal agencies to take your call and set meetings, when you reach out to them, are you smiling? Are you smiling in your email? More importantly, are you smiling in your voicemails? When you leave a voicemail, we who have been trained formally in sales for years and years learn to have a mirror right in front of us where you're smiling at the mirror when you're leaving a voicemail. People can hear that coming through. Literally, I don't want you reaching out trying to sell me something and you sound like Debbie Downer or something. You know, it's like, it's like, well, if you can't be enthusiastic about what you sell, why should I be enthusiastic? If you can't be excited about scheduling a meeting with me, why should I be excited about it? And so I don't need you to be animated and overly excited, but I do need you to remember, if you smile, you will increase your level of enthusiasm and your warmth on a call. All that can make all the difference. Is somebody going, sure, let me talk to John or Jane. And the next thing in your process is to look at your voicemail, right? I'm assuming because of today's training, they're not taking your call, that you're not even getting them to get back to you, right? So we talk about enthusiasm in your voicemail. Make sure that voicemail has a script. I just did something today and I got a whole script here that I read. I'm an experienced speaker, very experienced speaker, right? But I still will use a script when I do voicemail. So it's the exact same. And I practice it. I role play it enough so that I've got some energy in it. And I bring my smile and the voicemail comes across professional, but in a way that the other person goes, sure, it sounds like a good meeting. The second thing is make sure you have an email template that is clear, concise, and easy to comply. So clear is driving directly to what you want. I would like an introduction meeting. Concise is short, right? Don't make it tell everything about your company. Have 2 small paragraphs. You're just trying to get to the point. You're just trying to walk up basically with an email and say, hi, I'm Neil. We do SharePoint. You got time to talk? And then easy to comply means give them a choice. I'm a free Tuesday or Thursday at 9 a.m. or 2 p.m. Any of those dates work for you, right? You're making it easy for them to go, sure, this time works for me. This day works for me, right? That's what you want to do in your template. And the last one is visibility and findability, or visibility. When I talk about visibility, you need to be findable. So if somebody searches for you, they can find you. And then you need to be attractive. And what attractive means is matching search intent. if you're trying to reach out, schedule a meeting, and you brought enthusiasm, right, to your voicemail, and you say, hey, we do cybersecurity, if they look back at your social media presence, your website, your LinkedIn profile, et cetera, does that scream cybersecurity? Does it say our company does cybersecurity? If it does, you're attractive. But if they look in and it's just a mess, right? I don't mean you, I mean your marketing presence. Is that attractive to them? When they think about, should I schedule a meeting with John or Jane? Is there desire in there to do it that matches what you're saying the call would be about, cybersecurity, for example? So make sure you take care of that. So here's the last tip I wanted to give you. Success is in the follow-up. This is really important. I said be persistent, and I didn't want to just say be persistent, right? How do I be persistent? What do I do, Neil? I called them. What do I do next? That's a classic question I had when I was running my business, and I couldn't really find a lot of answers. And for you, I want to give you very specific answers. This is from a checklist that I have, but if you look across the top, this is a 6-week follow-up on somebody I'm trying to reach out to and schedule a meeting with. If I can't get a meeting, right, I begin to follow up. This is a persistence schedule. And so 5 days times 6 weeks gets you 30 days. So initially, right, you can see the pattern I follow. I leave a voicemail on the first day in the morning, and in the afternoon, I follow up with an email. This is marketing engagement. I'm just trying to stay on their radar. 2 days later, I follow back up with an email. So if I left a voicemail and an email, now I'm following up with an email that says, hey, just bring in this top of your inbox. And you start seeing the pattern, right? I just stagger it. An email, then a voicemail, an email, then a voicemail. Always professional. Always a little deferential, saying, hey, I know you're busy. Just wanted to bring it back up. When you got a minute, if we could schedule a time, right? Something like that. And I've got all sorts of templates and scripts in the sustaining member library if you're a member there. But I've done training where you can find it as well. But follow up constantly. And I even put kind of times in here about when you're following up in the mornings so that you're trying to reach them at the beginning of their day. Over on the right-hand side, what I try to say is, as you go forward and you're reaching out and you're thinking about people aren't taking my calls or scheduling a meeting, I want you to remember that often it's not personal. People go away, they get busy, right? I just had somebody, a potential customer, reach out and say, hey, I thought you were going to send me something. And what I said to them was two things, right? I was waiting on purpose, but two, I thought you were heading out of town. I wanted to make sure I just let you enjoy that and I came back, right? Well, your agency buyers that you're trying to reach out and schedule meetings with, they have a personal and a professional life that is completely independent of taking your call. Be patient with that. Remember, they're real people. And if you be persistent and follow back up, you're going to get that traction. You're going to get the meeting. So here's what I want you to remember from today's training, right? Your expectations, they need to be realistic. Remember the bell curve and really just be aiming for that 16%, those two innovator and early adopters, right? The second thing is process is usually the culprit. It's generally not the people. And this includes if you got people working for you and they're not having success, look at the process, right? I used to micromanage people until I grew up and realized that it was the process, right? And I was just being a jerk, micromanaging. So micromanage the process. Look at the process and go, how can we improve that? And the last one is just remember, success is in the follow-up. If at first you don't succeed, try again, right? Hey, if you're interested in working with us, happy to talk to you about how we can help, how my team and I can help you accelerate your business development within the federal market. Just visit us on govconchamber.com. For all of us, just remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. Part of the process is family first. I got to run to a kid event, so I'm going to wrap this up a little early. Thanks for joining. I'll see you in the next training.